Please.
In a New York City hospital, a baby is born, a little girl. She cries and life begins, a moment of classic beauty. The doctors and the nurses look after the infant. Everything appears normal. It isn't. There's something wrong. This baby's very sick. When will the withdrawal symptoms begin to show?
Well, that depends in large upon exactly when the mother had the last dose of the drug. And this sometimes may be immediately after delivery, or it may take several hours, or maybe a day or so in order to get the effects. But most likely they are forthcoming.
1,500 babies were born last year with a special problem. Like this little girl, they were born with a monkey on their backs. They were born addicted to heroin because their mothers, while pregnant, were addicted to heroin. And so they suffered from the agonies of heroin withdrawals from day one of their lives. The Littlest Junkies, a story of heroin and babies, a children's story.
This be the sin of men, the sins of men and women, the tree of life, the tree of good and evil.
My mind sometimes be haunted by my memories. Visions in my head show me digging up my enemies. I hate to go to sleep because of the dread that's in my head. At times I find myself running from shadows of the dead. They're trying to pull me under and bury me alive. I wake up thinking it's over and thinking I survived. They pull me back to sleep and separate my soul from my body and put my bloody flesh in a hole. Shit gets worse now. The curse caged my faith in. I rose from beneath the surface of earth as Satan, inflicting people with war, drugs, diseases. Jumped up, fell back to sleep, resurrected. Jesus, healing the same motherfuckers I just inflicted. Spreading righteousness, the word of God, my mind is twisted. A holy war in the mental, I'm sort of brain dead. Spirits got me under pressure and they fucking up my head.
Slowly I can feel my soul leave. My heart pumps part the lungs so I can breathe. I take my last breath, gas cause I'm pet. I felt the needle, which helped an evil from another dimension. They had me flinching and no attention was paid by the nurses, was worstest. I felt the stitches as the door locks, but treated for witches and warlocks and devils and demons with shovels. They were scheming. I woke up when I was taken up by this dreaming. And then I was brought to the courts of another world. There I met my lover Cheryl, putting what shouldn't uncover the pearls. Instead of a jewel, I discovered a germ that burned and turned my sperm into worms. Filthy ass maggots with maggots. Oh my God, I was thinking God, it was the Sabbath. Yeah, out there I saw Nat Turner, and I saw Christ. He was talking around with a black burner.
Another time my mind dwelled on a spell. I heard cries from the dead souls burning in hell. Visions of their flesh drowning in the flood. While in the hallucination I seen heads soaked in blood. I snapped back to reality and dashed for my Bible. Open it up in hurry confusion, reaching for survival. But all of a sudden I'm overpowered by that curse. The songs that I read made my visions worse. Seen a therapist, told him spirits tried to bury me. Spilt what's on my mind when I was done. He needed therapy. He recommended a baptism, a sacrifice. My soul rose to heaven but was cast back down by Christ. In forms of thunder, rain, hail, heavy winds. Not even the blood of Christ could cleanse the sins of men.
That was the state of confusion that we live in. I converted to over 1,000 religions, a permanent member to over 6 million churches. I'm still trying to repent from these curses. Me and the Holy Wizard, we went and slept in the graveyard. Remember that? We stayed up all night and played cards. Now I sit in the pit of cobras. I'm writing rhymes in the stance of yoga. Oh my God, I played drums at the Bones of Muhammad. In 3 years, I grew a beard and roamed with a garment. Yeah, what was that you said, Ezekiel? Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, when my toys is bleeding and was stinking.
But the withdrawals would begin almost immediately. The nurse picked up the infant and brought it to the mother to give her a first look at the child she brought into the world. Mother and baby together again. The mother looks at the child. It responds with an involuntary shudder, a shaking, a symptom of withdrawal. The child, like the parent, is addicted to heroin. New York and just about every other major city is fighting a monstrous heroin epidemic. We all know that. But because the drug addict has to rob and steal and hurt people to get money to feed his habit, we frankly have very little sympathy or compassion left for him. But this is a story about a group of addicts who are completely innocent. The 1,500 babies who were born last year addicted to heroin are perhaps the most tragic side effect to the heroin epidemic. This is their story. It's a story about what happens to them during pregnancy. It's a story about the agonies of withdrawal that they suffer shortly after birth, and it's a story about the prospects they have for life. It was only in the late 1950s that doctors really began noticing that heroin addiction in the mother during pregnancy could affect her unborn child. But the number of people involved then was still relatively small. It's only been in the last few years that the problem has taken on epidemic proportions. In 1966, about 300 addicted babies were born here. By 1972, it was up around 1,500. Right now, 1 out of every 40 babies born in city hospitals is born a heroin addict. And in some hospitals, it's as high as 1 in 25.
Was this baby born actually a heroin addict?
Yes, it was. Donald was born a heroin addict and had to undergo withdrawal, which means that they have diarrhea, vomiting, dehydration, and many of these babies in the past have died. Now,
what percentage of babies die?
It used to be that a third would die. Now we know a little more. We can give them methadone, we can give them thorazine, we can hydrate them, and most of them do not die in the city hospitals, even though the majority are born underweight. Over 50% are born weighing less than 5 pounds. We can save the babies, but then, of course, what do we save them for? To go back to the heroin-addicted mother and to the street.
Watching a baby go through withdrawals is really a horror. At one time, almost all of the babies died. When untreated, the gruesome toll was around 93%. And even when doctors attempted treatment, 34% still died. The tremors, the vomiting, the diarrhea and convulsions that perhaps a full-grown addict could take when kicking cold turkey were just too much when the addict weighed only 6 or 7 or 8 pounds. In the last few years, medicine has caught up with the immediate problem of safely withdrawing the babies, and infant mortality is now under 10%. But there are 2 other major areas of concern still uncorrected. The first is the long-term effect of infant addiction. Nobody really knows what happens to these children as they get older. The medical profession and the social services agencies must share the blame for so far failing to follow up on the babies once they leave the hospitals. The other area of concern has nothing at all to do with medicine. When these babies go home, what in the world do they go home to? The stories are hair-raising. It's common, for instance, for a junkie mother, annoyed by her baby's crying, to shoot the baby up with dope just to keep it quiet. There's more.
When you go into the home situation, you find that the place is very dirty. There's not very much food around. Children may be in dirty diapers. The clothing would be almost non-existent, or very dirty, something like that.
What do you do in a case like that?
Well, in a case like that, we try to take the child out of that situation.
Do you have any cases where the child has actually died because of neglect or abuse?
One case comes to mind of a situation where we got a report of a dead-on-arrival child at a hospital where the father of this child had allegedly taken the child and smashed the child against a radiator until it was...
These were drug addicts' parents?
Drug addict parents, yes.
In 1971, there were 65 cases of child abuse deaths. 55 of them were in the homes of drug addicts. Malnutrition, a filthy home, and no supervision at all are also common. When a junkie is out prostituting herself or robbing someone to get money to buy dope, she can also be home administering to the needs of her child.
I opened the door. The floor was very filthy. It appears it hadn't been cleaned in approximately about a year or more. And the stench was unbearable. Also, we found there was a dead dog in the kitchen. It seemed to have been dead for about 2 weeks.
How many kids were there?
3 kids.
What was the mother doing?
She was lying on the floor.
Nodding out?
Yes, she was lying on the floor, nodding out. She was on a dirty, filthy quilt on the floor. And there was also bugs, bed bugs, also in the and the kids had been bitten by these bugs, and they had sores. And when we found one kid had meningitis when we got it to the hospital.
What about furniture? Didn't the welfare department buy furniture for her?
She was getting welfare money. She said she had to sell her furniture to keep up her habit. She said the welfare wasn't giving her enough money to take care of her drug habit. And I asked her about the kids. Did she ever try? She said no, she's only taking care of her drug habits. And the welfare wasn't paying enough to take care of her drug habits, so she had to get sell her furniture to take care of her drug needs. I asked about help, about the kids, but the children's health, because they were sores all about their body, and they was filthy also. As a matter of fact, one girl had caked dirt in her head. It looked like it hadn't been washed in quite a while, and she was filthy. And sores, she was sores all in the corner of her mouth, inside her mouth, and all over her body. And I asked her, did she ever try to get any help? She said she didn't have time for these kids. I asked her, did she want the kids? She said she didn't want them, but she needs them so she can get welfare. She said if she didn't have the kids, they would cut off welfare.
How's she getting welfare all this time when the kid's in that condition?
In this case, no visit had been made to this home since 1959. That was the last visit to this home.
More common than the horror stories of dead dogs and murdered children is the almost universal neglect by addict mothers of their children. One young mother at the Sarah Drug Rehabilitation Program told me how heroin had affected the care of her child.
I remember when I was shooting dope, like the baby would cry at night because she was hungry, and I would neglect her because it was such a nice high that, we just let her cry from hunger, and I wouldn't change her Pampers. I just didn't care.
What about the baby's food?
I couldn't take care of the baby. I used to give her milk cold, the canned milks I used to buy in the pharmacy. She had a bad diarrhea, and I wouldn't even take her to the doctor.
Could you take proper care of your child?
I wasn't a proper mother.
But even before the problem of taking decent care of the child comes the problem of the pregnancy itself.
One of the major problems is that pregnant addicts often don't seek prenatal care, and this is something that really compounds the problem. The first thing we have to do is to make pregnant addicts aware of the fact that good obstetrical care, good prenatal care is available to them, both for treating their drug problem and for providing general medical care for the women and for their unborn children. I think this is the thing that we have to bring across to these women. This certainly isn't going to solve the drug problem, but I think it's a first step in caring for these babies prior to the time of their delivery.
Certainly, for what we are seeing, the problem is getting worse. I've been here only for 2 years, and 2 years ago we didn't see this many babies with drug withdrawal symptoms. One doesn't solve the problem by just treating the baby in the newborn nursery or in any unit for that matter. It is more of a social problem other than medical.
The greatest frustration is the fact that most of the infants will go out into an environment in which they really are not part of the environment. And just living in the ghetto itself, to go to a house where there's inadequate heating, inadequate sanitation facilities, with a mother who is perpetuating her addiction. It's not only a problem of pregnancy, but a problem of life outside of the pregnancy. It's a life outside that really represents the point where we have to establish some type of change.
There's almost a complete lack of prenatal care among addicted women. 76%, more than 3 out of every 4 pregnant addicts, don't see a doctor until the day their baby is born. No prenatal care means an increased chance the baby will be born mentally retarded or that there'll be some other terrible complication. The mother's environment during pregnancy also takes its toll on the unborn child. A shooting gallery is not exactly the kind of place where a pregnant woman can get a proper diet or do the right kind of exercises. It's also estimated that at least 20% of pregnant addicts have syphilis or hepatitis, and most are much more interested in how the pregnancy will complicate their hustling for drug money than with getting themselves cleaned up for the sake of the unborn baby. In New York, the city that has the worst heroin affliction in the world, there are only 2 special programs caring for less than 150 pregnant addicts and addicted mothers. One of them's a branch of Odyssey House that operates out of an old city facility on Ward's Island. The city donated the building to them, but they have no money to equip the place. With no money for beds, nursery equipment, or any of the other things needed to run a child care center, the population of the house is necessarily very small. 14 mothers and expectant mothers with 17 children. The oldest child here is 3. The object's to provide a place for pregnant addicts and addicted mothers to come with their children, to an environment that's controlled and drug-free. The theory: keep the mothers off the street and with their kids, and perhaps they'll eventually become responsible enough and strong enough to leave and stay off drugs. But it's a long, tough road, and one so far marked by little success. Half the residents have already left just since we filmed this segment. Their complaints range from lack of proper facilities to overly tough discipline. While the complaints may or may not be justified, my feeling is that no pregnant addict or addicted mother should be allowed to leave a program uncured. The horror stories of what happens to the children of untreated addicts are just too widespread.
Did you ever think during the pregnancy that you might be hurting the baby?
Yes.
Well, how did that make you feel?
It really made me feel, I really felt bad about it. And, after I realized what I was doing, I tried to find somewhere to go, where I can do something for myself and prevent my baby from being born like that. But everywhere I went, I couldn't be accepted because I was pregnant.
Much as people may want to say the addict has brought it on himself, the addict is no good, let the addict suffer the consequences, to ask a newborn to suffer consequences that newborn had no control over is really very unfair. And I personally think society should do something.
What can society do?
Well, the first thing they have to do is at least fund some treatment. We don't have any money. In fact, 2 weeks ago we ran out of milk. That we have the building and we have heat and light and electricity and things like that. We have no food, we have no money for staff. Everybody here is working extra time because we want to give these babies a chance.
So far in this program, most of the addicted women that we've shown have been black women, and that might lead you to believe that the problem was a racial problem. Well, it isn't. The problem of heroin in babies is a problem that has no regard at all for the race, the economic class, or even the social status of its victims. There are no available statistics, but as nearly as I can tell, about 30 or 40% of these babies are not black. They're white, Puerto Rican, or Oriental. And if we'd been allowed to spend as much time prowling around suburban hospitals as we did the facilities here in the city, this film would have been more racially accurate. The other program is run by Kings County Hospital in conjunction with the Downstate Medical Center. Unlike the drug-free Odyssey program, this one uses methadone as a lure to get the junkies off the streets and under medical supervision. That's probably one major reason it's having greater success holding women than the Odyssey project. Another is the facility itself. Because of a dedicated medical staff that works for no pay, there's been a combination here of neonatal medical care with the traditional anti-drug counseling.
I was detoxed down to 5 before I went into delivery. I was trying to be detoxed for at least 2 weeks, but I didn't make it.
How do you feel about the fact that, well, the baby had to go through that?
Well, I'm sorry it happened, but it's happened.
What's going to happen with him now?
With him now? Well, after I bring him home and everything, ain't nothing going to happen because I'm not going to be using no drugs or methadone either.
As a general rule, the baby will be born drug-free only if the mother can be cleaned out 2 or 3 weeks before delivery. But detoxification during pregnancy is not always possible. If the mother's really a heavy drug user and her supply is suddenly cut off, the unborn baby, who's just as addicted as the mother is, can kick itself to death in the womb, going through withdrawals.
How much were you using every day?
Let me see. You know, it grew. I was shooting almost a bundle a day.
How much money is that?
That's 25 bags. That's almost $125 a day.
How are you getting that?
Well, you know, you just was getting it. That's all.
What are you using now?
We on Methadone. I'm on program. I use nothing. Just the Methadone. I'm on 70 milligrams.
Were you using 70 milligrams when the baby was born?
Right.
So the baby went through withdrawals.
Yeah, he's going through withdrawals now, right.
It's sad to say, but methadone, the drug now bearing the brunt of society's war on heroin, has done nothing to alleviate the problem of heroin in babies. If anything, it's complicated it. Infant withdrawal from addictive methadone is even more severe than from heroin. And of the 1,500 addicted babies born here last year, about 250 of them were born addicted to methadone. There's also evidence that even after withdrawal, methadone may be a factor in sudden and otherwise unexplained infant deaths. What can the doctors do, then, if a particular mother can't be safely detoxified during pregnancy, since both the alternatives, heroin and methadone, apparently cause infant withdrawals? Well, it's a terrible choice to have to make. But at least when it's methadone that's offered, the pregnant addict will usually come in off the streets to get it. And when she's in the clinic, she can be treated for the syphilis, the hepatitis, the gonorrhea, and all the other incidental medical problems that they usually have. She can also get that all-important prenatal care, and perhaps arrangements can even be made for the infant withdrawals once the baby is born. As a solution, it stinks. It's definitely the choice between two evils, but methadone is definitely the lesser of those two evils, and for now, it's the best the medical profession has to offer. Unlike the policy in most hospitals, the mother and the addicted child are not automatically separated at downstate. While foster homes are usually much better for the child than allowing it to go home with its addicted natural mother, foster homes are no bargain. So the baby stays in the hospital while attempts are made to rehabilitate the mother. The mother's allowed to come and visit her child in the nursery, but she's not allowed to take the baby home unless and until she's shown satisfactory progress in getting herself together. It's a good idea, but it only works if the agency makes absolutely sure that when the baby is finally released, that it's not going home with the junkie to a shooting gallery.
Was your first baby addicted?
No, my baby wasn't. No.
What happened with the first one?
The first one was drug-free, like they told me. She was healthy. She was small. The doctor told me I was built for small children. She was 5'13" and the prettiest thing I ever had.
She wasn't as lucky with her second child. Georgette tried. She made an honest effort to get herself off drugs so that the baby would be born drug-free. When she was about 5 months pregnant, she tried to detoxify herself, and under ordinary circumstances, it should have been early enough to protect the child. But when you're talking about heroin in babies, nothing is ordinary. There wasn't enough time for the baby to be detoxified because it was born 3 months premature. At birth, it weighed only slightly more than 1 pound, and it was addicted to heroin. Most addicted babies are born premature, and most are much smaller than normal babies the same age. But not all are as lucky as this little girl. She at least continues to cling to life. The awesome job of trying to track down and protect the thousands of neglected and abused children in the city falls to the Bureau of Child Welfare. One worker described what the agency tries to do in the case of an addicted infant.
The purpose of the referral to our agency is to advise us that there's a child in need of protection in the community, and what our office does is to evaluate the home situation that that child would be returning to if the child were to go home. In other words, we visit the family and we try to evaluate the ability of the adults or just the mother in that home to take care of that child. In this case, the mother is a drug addict because the child is suffering from withdrawal symptoms. We're trying to understand whether or not the mother can enter a program, whether the mother can be rehabilitated, whether or not she can provide a home that will be a safe, adequate home for a child.
Do you find out about all the children?
I would say probably a very, very small percentage. Only the referrals that come into us from mandated sources, such as schools and hospitals, really are known to us, so that there probably is a large population in the community we are unaware of.
What we have here is a major public health problem. Now, it's not a problem of white people or black people. It's a problem of society as a whole. We have a large number of young women who are heroin addicts, and these women are in the childbearing age, and they're having children. And these children have been exposed to heroin in utero. Unfortunately, we really don't know what's going to happen to these children many years from now. We have to develop the means to study the problem, just like we would develop means of studying cancer or tuberculosis or any other problem. And this has to be studied not only for the good of the addict, but for the good of all of us and for society as a whole.
The whole question of caring for and protecting the addicted infant is not only emotionally distressing, it's also terribly complex. We've seen that it's a lot more than just a medical problem. It's also a social problem, the kind that'll take a lot more than just hospitals and medicine to fix up. But after talking with the experts and reading the available medical papers written on the subject of heroin in babies, we have a suggested approach to the problem. First of all, the programs now in existence for the treatment of the pregnant addict, like those at Odyssey House and at Kings County Downstate, must be vastly expanded. Right now, we're caring for only about 150 mothers and their children. With 1,500 kids born addicted just last year, our present ratio is 1 mother and child treated for every 10 born without any medical supervision at all, and that has to change. But expanding the necessary programs is just the first step toward solution. The next question is how to get the pregnant addict off the streets and into the program once it's set up. Some will come voluntarily. Unfortunately, most will not. The question then becomes, can a junkie be forced to enroll in a program? The law now is that drug addicts cannot be forced to accept help if they don't want help. They can be arrested for the possession of heroin, but they can't be arrested just for being a heroin addict. But I think an argument can be made that a different situation exists when that addict happens to be a pregnant woman. The law may allow her to screw herself up, but it should not permit her to poison her unborn child. In the late stage of pregnancy, when abortion is no longer legally possible, the fetus must be considered a separate person with some legal rights of its own. And one of those rights should be the right to be born drug-free. In short, treatment should be made absolutely mandatory for all addicts who are more than 24 weeks pregnant. For a pregnant addict to go untreated or to leave treatment during pregnancy would become a violation of law. In addition, all public assistance would become conditional on participation in a recognized drug treatment program. No treatment, no unemployment. No treatment, no welfare. No treatment, no public assistance whatsoever. It all sounds very harsh, doesn't it? Well, it's not nearly as harsh as the agony suffered by an infant going through the pains of withdrawals. How much dope are you using every day?
A couple of bags.
2-3 bags?
Yes.
Did you ever use more than that?
Yeah, if I had the money.
Did you use methadone too?
Yes.
Did you got on the street? That you copped on the street?
Yes, yes.
Did anyone tell you that maybe the baby might be born addicted because of that?
Yes.
You think you're going to use dope after this is over?
No, I'm get myself together. I can't take the strain no more. I'd rather be dead than sticking needle in my arm again.
There are probably about 500,000 drug addicts in this country now, and I wonder how many of them start each awful day of their life by saying, I'd rather be dead than ever stick a needle in my arm again. But no matter what we think of heroin addicts generally, we can no longer allow the children to suffer for the crimes of the parents. The 1,500 addicted babies born last year, and all those babies who will be born until we finally bring the heroin epidemic under control, need our help. They've done nothing wrong, and they're reaching out their hands to us.